the kids to bed, dad's home. We are the DWO podcast, representing the dad world order. I am the handsome head of household, Mr. Magnificent, Mike Martin. And with me, as always, the rest of this patriarch pack. We got the big bad bearded daddy. He is Big Rig Eric Maffei.
Honk if you hear me, baby. Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he is the perpetual mid-carder and the two-time road record holder. He is the wrestling t-shirt guy, Safe Bus.
Cowabunga, indeed. It is day 858 of consecutively wearing wrestling shirts, and it's chin up, tits out today.
Good old Tony Storm. Hell yeah. Well, as Mr. Magnificent said, we are the DWO podcast. Tonight we have with us a very special guest. Boys, we got us a CEO on the show, Mr. James Deighan. Sir, how the heck are you?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I wish I would have come prepared with some better dad energy tonight, but hopefully you guys can pick up the slack of leaving.
That's all right.
I did just finish bath time with two dudes, so I'm in the club on the outside.
There you go.
Sable tangent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for those that don't know, you are the CEO of Mega Cat Studios. Am I correct in that statement?
You got it.
All
yes,
right.
Sir.
And Mega Cat Studios is known for the game I know the three of us love. I really enjoyed it, which is Wrestle Quest.
I'm happy to hear it, guys. Thanks for checking it out. We worked hard on it for a long time, a couple of years.
So how did that all come together, man? I mean, that was it for me. It felt like it got advertised and then it came out like really quick. But obviously, there was a lot of that went into it.
Yeah. It's like the more romantic version is when we first started Mega Cat. We listed out all the games we wanted to make. Like, what are our dream games? Like, why did we join the industry? And one of the games we wanted to make was Wrestle Quest. We weren't sure in the title at first. We just knew we wanted to make like a wrestling RPG. We wanted something that held the high spots of wrestling with storytelling and characters. And we wanted something that could allow us to, take a lot of the high creative of what makes wrestling really crazy and high spectacle, elevate it with some official licenses and find a path forward there. It just took literally forever for so many reasons. Like the size of the game, the licenses, the legal stuff, and then the cost. Like it was, we spent millions of dollars making it, so it's like every dollar we made for years went into making Wrestle Quest. We're really lucky that it made its money back because it was a pretty risky venture, and that's I'd say so. So it's been a wild one, man. I wish there's a lot of things I wish would have done differently, but we're really happy with the reception we did get, and there's a lot of wrestling fans out there that showed up. I don't know how much you guys have done games industry like interviews or friends or family in the industry, but you're familiar with the concept of publishers, like how publishers work with devs.
Yeah.
So like at a really high level, they basically co-fund the development to kind of like dig you out, and then they have a recoup term where they get their money back, but they also get a big chunk of the royalty. And then we had royalties that went to the talent, and we also were proud to basically give the talent larger pool of royalties than they ever received too. And then that just turned into an even bigger basically hill to climb. So we brought it to so many publishers, and I'd say a significant number of them didn't want to touch it because they were worried about doing anything with licensed talent without WWE. Like they either had outstanding relationships or the hope or intent to have them someday. And then other cases, we just folks that didn't understand wrestling, like not wrestling fans, right? So we'd have publishers that come back with, do people like wrestling still? It's kind of old, and the people know who Macho Man is still, like, and to that point, it's like blasphemous for us to hear, but we did like at PAX East, and we just won a handful of like best in show, really really neat like indie awards, and then and we'd have people online that are like, who is Andrade the giant, and it's like, and I'm like, man, not only do I feel super old, but it's just like it is definitely a new world. I'd say like the random foot traffic of PAX East, like people don't really know who Macho Man is. Like it got to the point that it would kind of crack me up because if you played the game, we made like 400 of our own characters too in the game. So people
Right.
would be talking to their friends and trying to hype it up, and they'd be like Joey, I know you're gonna love Wrestle Quest. We have Jake the Snake, we have John the Pill, Joe the Schmoo, Donnie the Dog. And I'm like, so the first one was a wrestler, and the rest is just them picking up nonsense NPCs we created. And I'm like, I appreciate the enthusiasm. They did pick out. There were some real wrestlers.
I personally enjoyed the just absolute nonsense NPCs that.
Oh, dude,
yeah,
I'm so happy to do that, man. We get a lot of flack for that.
So I gotta bring. I'm the reason that this show reached out to you, because I gotta tell you how serendipitous this game was for me. Okay, so there's a few reasons.
Mhm.
One, I'm a die-hard wrestling fan, of course. I'm in a dad-themed podcast, but it's also got a wrestling paint job to it. You know what I mean? So we're big into wrestling. We do a lot of wrestling interviews. But, bro, so first off, I have the Macho Man tattooed on my arm here. I don't know how well you can see that.
You're committed.
And you want to talk committed?
you want to talk committed?
Okay, I got the Intercontinental Championship that Macho Man wore
Oh,
at WrestleMania 3 across my belly. I'm a die-hard wrestling fan, right? And then to top it all off, not only is this a game with Macho Man in it, it's got a toy box theme. And my band, I'm in a band since 2014 called Toy Box with 2 X's. And we throw toys out to the crowd. So when I saw there was a toy box themed wrestling Macho Man video game, I was like, where in the magical hell did this come from?
I've been watching you.
It's funny, man. Like, I can tell you how that started. I don't know if I've ever told anyone the story before. Like, we knew we wanted to do wrestling and storytelling, and the genre had to be RPGs, right? Because it's like storytelling, not going to get that deep with like a brawler, or that deep with like a wrestling game. We also didn't want to get mixed in with the million other like Fire Pro styled games and just get lost in the sauce. Like, oh look, it's a 400th pixel art Macho Man that's 16 pixels tall, looks just like him. And so we started looking at, like, we basically pulled about 100 people, friends, people in our newsletter. Like, what are your most nostalgic like memories of wrestling? What are your fondest? What was your first? And I'd say like maybe 50% were like, oh, wrestling toys, dude. Wrestling toys for sure. Like, my first memory was my dad gave me an action figure on Easter, or my first memory was fighting with my brother over my LJN Hulk Hogan, or by the way, I still have a Sergeant Slaughter here. And it's like, toys came as a theme. And then as we were looking at kind of an art direction, we're like, man, these toys are pretty interesting. They're like articulated joints, and there's like all these different types and styles and regions, and it's kind of this unifying piece of wrestling fandom. It doesn't matter if you were like a WCW fan or a WWE fan or like a WWF fan or which era. The toys have always been this like huge piece of the collectibles and the world. So that became like almost like this moment of, okay, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be wrestling toys, because then we can take these liberties that are way crazier. We have analogs for steroids, like super glue, like our performance enhancing tape and that kind of stuff. And then,
yes,
because one of our other goals too is like a pretty dad heavy company. We wanted to make sure that we made something that hit an E10 plus rating that still had a lot of wrestling authenticity, because we wanted to have what we were referring to as the cat dad moment. Like, sit down on the couch with your son, play alone, play your son, play your daughter, but sit down and say, oh my gosh, I grew up with X, or I remember my first event when this happened, and now you get to see why. And it's like, we really wanted to cultivate that moment, and we knew that we wouldn't be able to do that with authenticity with all the things that wrestling has, right? So it's like the toys gave us all these creative liberties to also very accurately represent it to a nod if you're in the know, but not like making it so that, I mean, I love Dark Side of the Ring, so I'm a wrestling fan, but I also wish they didn't always portray so many of these guys in such negative light, particularly these legacies, right? They're not even like, God knows those guys were on so much cocaine, like they weren't thinking straight, right? It's like
some things we just want to know,
Dude, for sure, man. But yeah, I love the toy stuff too. I'm really glad you guys liked it. And I was like, I try to take as many wrestling podcasts as I like, because I used to listen to a ton of them and I love them. And I feel like that's like, I'm a fan first. That's why we made Wrestle Quest, and I saw you guys had a Dad World or podcast. I'm like, this is awesome. I got to find a way to take this one, because I used to take a lot of them, but now that I have like 70 hours a week, 2 kids, it's just like, it's hard to fit it in, man. But we have a pretty big team. A lot of the team members are willing to jump in and do stuff. I hadn't had Wrestle Quest podcast outreach maybe 2 or 3 months. I'm like, this dad podcast is going to be my comeback, dude. You know?
Well, hey, you mean you're already a member, so I mean,
Yeah.
it just feels
That's true.
right.
How
Yeah,
many kids
and
you got,
dude,
bud?
I can't wait for my kids to be old enough to play. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's like
Oh,
his only memory that's like wrestling based right now is, well, he loves wrestling because of Wrestle Quest, I think, partially, right? Like Wrestle Quest put in his backpack and whatnot. But Max's first step, he was holding like a Hasbro Road Warrior figure, and he took like a step and a second step. I told my wife, I'm like, that's magic. I told you we had to bring this over, you know?
You didn't
But
look
it's
at her
like,
and go,
rush.
rush.
yeah, exactly. Well, I wish it would have been Hawk. That would have been perfect. But it's like it basically, like, wrestling was a new concept to him because my wife was definitely not like enthusiastic about like Montessori wooden toy like kids fighting each other in the ring. So I was watching so many Peacock reruns, dude, on Sundays when she'd be upstairs doing mom stuff, and I'd be like, "Let's go, Max. We're getting in. We're going to SummerSlam 91." You know, like
It's what we like to call raising them right. We do a lot of that ourselves.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's funny.
I saw the Zelda Shield too, dude. So you're like a retro RPG fan, like,
Bro, so my son's name is Link, bro. Like, so when I realized it was basically, I mean, for lack of better terms, for anyone who played a lot of RPGs, Wrestle Quest is like a wrestling game with like a blast of Chrono Trigger almost. It's got like the systems work so well. It's so well done. And I'm not just shilling for it because we got the CEO on. I would tell you, if your game sucks, it does
Dude,
not.
I've had plenty of setups, and I love it. I'm ready to go. But it's just like we put so much love and attention into it. Like, we made the game because we wanted to. It's all our own budget, all our own money. It's like, there's so many times we could have neutered it, and for this focus group and these and that. But and the systems were originally built around Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG. And it's funny because the game has so much, like, there's a lot of content at ship of like 50 hours of content, but we cut a ton of content, and that's just like a good indication that we like overdid it. Like, we just loved it so much. I would have worked on it the rest of my life. Like, our team was just like, here's what the third installment of the DLC will look like for spring 26. Like, we were just so deep on the whole,
Right.
how to extend it and how to keep the stories moving and how to build them out. But by the time we got the end of it and shipped it, and the wrestling fans showed up, it was just probably some of the most satisfying months like we've ever had in 9 years of MegaCat, because it's just like so many publishers said there's no way there's an audience for this. Like, wrestling fans are blue collar, RPG fans are like, high thinking, thoughtful, strategic players. Like, they're in conflict. There's no crossover in this intersection. You've bifurcated your audience by making it toys, so it's Toy Story, but it's wrestling. But it's this like undertone of serious storytelling. Like, this is a mess. I mean, so many people just tell us, stop it. We're wasting money. We're crazy. We've yada yada yada. And like, slow and behold, so many wrestling fans like surface out of corners, like all these 30-year-old plus wrestling fans, because we had a lot of we'll call them like the 2K wrestling fans that really hated it, right? Like, we had some people that were just like, used that it wasn't 3D. You couldn't create a wrestler. You couldn't wrestle in a match. I'm like, guys, it's always been a story-driven RPG, right? Like, every single piece of marketing material says that. But we had a whole string of folks who were part of some of the streamers we were working with that just, they were like the wrong audience, right? They were like the 2K create a wrestler like league fans, and they were just like, why is this ugly art here? Where's the model? How do we do this? And I'm like, guys, this is like infinitely labor-intensive hand-drawn pixel art. Like, we have 200,000 frames of hand-drawn art in the game.
Wow.
Like, we were doing it to capture nostalgia. We had like it's just crazy. Like, when you talk to the wrong audience, how obviously a bad fit it is, right? Because the people who love 2K simulation games, like, they're not going to love like a story-driven wrestling game, right? So
it's too damn complicated for me.
Yeah, dude. And then it's funny. I woke up on launch day, and it was like a nightmare because we had like 20 bad reviews. They're all from China, because we had we have an automated bug report feature that if fans experience a bug, we get the log, but it's blocked by what they call as the Great China Firewall. So like basically any online connected service and launches within China automatically closes. So everyone in China that was playing it, and they wake up before the US does in time zones, they'd open the game and it would crash. So we were getting slaughtered with reviews of, your first 20 reviews are negative. it was like we put a little call to action out to some of our super fans and people that have been following Wrestle Quest, and they like showed up big time to kind of turn the wave and build the momentum. And I was sitting there just sweating, thinking like, I'm gonna lose the office, you know,
Right.
lay off half my team. Like, what are we gonna do? You know, I'm like China, you know. Like,
dude,
so
I'll tell you
crazy.
what though. There's one thing that the IWC can be very divided and everything like that, but you see it like with the Joe Hendry thing right now. Like, man, when the wrestling community comes together, they freaking come together. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like bringing his song up the charts, and with Wrestle Quest, like, yeah, it is a niche audience, but man, it's a niche audience that really gives a shit.
Dude, I agree, man. It's like some of the most satisfying work in my professional career. We've had games that made more money. We've had games that got more stuff. We've made a lot of cool stuff for other people. That's like what we're probably known for, is like credits for like really big AAA stuff. We're like the 20th studio touching it. It's not the same. It's like making your own thing, right? But it's like,
right.
Man, it's just the wrestling fans showing up just so satisfying, because I knew they're out there. I knew it wasn't just us, and we saw inklings of it up to launch. 4 years of work, and it was just like, yeah, so crazy the whole time. Every corner something else would happen with like, a publisher had a request we couldn't accommodate, or we had like 10 wrestlers we had to pull that signed. We validated, one thing or another happened. It was like we had to rewrite a huge chunk of the story. Whenever Brett had basically like sold his name and likeness, because he was like he's our second Macho Man, right? Hockey, baseball, glasses, 2 eras, champions. Like, we had this kind of story going on where you'd Brink and Muchacho, where they're both following in the footsteps of the heroes, and our characters would cross over. And I remember I was sitting there. It's funny. I was sitting in the hospital that day, and I'd just been like admitted to the ER after thinking I had COVID, but it was really a heart attack, which is a whole separate thing. And I had like the craziest symptoms. I thought I had the flu. So I went to MedExpress. They sent me to the hospital. The hospital admitted me to do all the imaging. And I'm sitting there, and I get a text from Brett. He's like, I'm so sorry this is happening, but like, I sold everything today. And like, I'll send you my daughter will send you a refund for the deposit. We've been doing this for a while, and I know you guys are deep into it. I know you worked hard, and I'm so sorry. And I'm like reading the text. I'm like, this is like the worst day of my life.
God.
like I could feel the personal connection of the team, and I could feel the cost like weighing heavy on us, because it's small businesses aren't built for agility. When you take a big bet, if you take a big bet, you just take the big bet, dude. So we had so many of those, Brett being the biggest, but we had all sorts of folks like Ted DiBiase, signed to Ted DiBiase. Lo and behold, he doesn't own Ted DiBiase either. And then it's funny, we'd go through agencies, and people had signed tons of other licensed wrestling deals. They just don't get. WWE is a pretty interesting position with a lot of that stuff, where I think, particularly with the legacy talent, they give them a little more leeway than they get credit for. I think if WWE wanted to cause trouble for these guys, they could do it all day. They actually don't. Like, I think they get a bad rep for controlling so much and not supporting enough health-wise, whatever, but I think they do. I've seen it.
Still let them eat.
Yeah, dude. And I'm like listening to these stories from the talent, and just like left and right, WWE letting these guys do all sorts of random hot sauce, coloring books, comic, like they own everything, dude. But the categories they're very protective over, video games and toys, because they're huge profit streams for stakeholders. Right. So it's like different ball game. And I have so much respect for like WWE, even with like Vince's recent transgressions. He's been my hero like most of my adult life, right? So it's like to me, I never wanted to. In fact, we tried going through WWE initially, and they thought it was laughable at best at the time. And then we ended up finding a way around it through all this talent. And what we would do is we'd also send our executed agreements transparently to WWE's legal team and say, like, tell me if you have conflict. Like, I'm just trying to do our best here. You guys said no. Now we're just doing it. I think they were certain we weren't going to finish it. 'Cause it's, big budget, lots of chaotic talent. Like, for sure, until the end, I think they were just like, what's going on? And then
right
at the end, I become friends with so many people at WWE that were just like, I can't believe you're doing this. Do you know what you're doing? It's a pretty big risk. Like, what are you going to do if we send you a cease and desist? I'm like, well, we'll probably try to cease and desist. Like, we're not, it's not instant. Like, I can't like pull it off switch, like, it's like those days, they take weeks. Like, you can't even put an update out in a day. It's like
Right.
I might submit a patch, and the patch might come out in 2 months, 3 months, because whole separate problem. But it's like when the game's already out, you're not going to get priority for patches.
Right.
Like, people that get priority are like your immediate releases, flagship publisher sizes, right? So we're always kind of beholden as the underdog to every other stakeholder and party and person. So Wrestle Quest was just a constant test of like tenacity or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys all have all played it, or is it just?
I have
Yeah,
played
I
it
have.
obsessively. I don't know exactly how many hours they have got in it, but I've definitely, for lack of a better term, pulled a Khalil and completion is that game.
Nice.
I definitely enjoyed every second of it, man. Like I said, it was made for me. So I've been putting other people onto it that aren't even wrestling fans, because I got a lot of video game bros, and they've all loved it. I've not heard one negative report on it, man.
Like I said, I give you guys a couple keys. You can do one as a giveaway for your fans or something too. I'm sure I got some at the office on a sheet. It's like most of the keys we did have they're kind of spanked. But I know I got a few, and knowing you guys are wrestling fans like you are, if you haven't played it, like I think you're gonna love it, because it's like just full of Easter eggs everywhere. I don't know if anyone could ever find all of them, because there's hundreds of them. Like
there's so many. I maybe got like a little over halfway through it, and actually, what I want to do is restart it, because, like you said, I want to play it with my daughter. She's 8, and she's a big getting into gaming and stuff like that. Like how you said, what did you call it, the cat den moment?
Cat den.
So like when Shredder's Revenge came out on Xbox, we sat and couch co-op that till we beat it. We played it all day. You know what I mean? And that's something that I love doing. So like when that came out, I started playing it. I'm like, man, I'd really love to, watch her play this. And so, I mean, she plays games from when I was a kid, playing Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Kingdom Hearts and all that stuff. So now I'm like, okay, I think she'll really enjoy this. So, but yeah, I mean, even that first half, I mean, there's Easter eggs everywhere, and it's amazing.
I love, because I found about this game organically from like word of mouth. I did not see any advertisement or anything. So I played it sight unseen, and I'm a huge, speaking of completionist, I'm a huge fan of him. And I think that's the first one that really popped me. When I walked past him, I think he's in like the wintry area, and I walked past the completionist. I was like, hold the hell on. Hold on a second. Like and then I just started paying attention, man. And there's signs in the cities that mention certain, brands and people's shows. Like I love that you guys used the My World as kind of like the backbone of the story in a way. It almost like it narrates the story in a way, and it's a tie to the real world. You know what I mean? I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, Dawson, I was talking to our head of like narrative, Zach, who's our head of studio now, and like he came up with the idea. It was like a Shakespearean chorus where like they like, basically like the way that plays out in Shakespearean writing is they recap like for the audience the acts, and we're like, that's what the podcast is for modern day wrestling culture. Like they're covering what just happened and they're recapitulating it, and it's like, what a cool way to extend this. Like someone who's new to wrestling, that's a huge RPG fan, might come there for the first time and uncover like these cool podcasts and these fan circles and, break down the terminology. And some of my fondest memories during development was we had at TwitchCon, I think we had one of these two events is either TwitchCon or PAX West are really close together. Someone came up to us. I was on the West Coast, and it was a press person who had interviewed us a year prior. And he's like, hey, I wanted to let you know, you guys turned me on to wrestling. He's like, I'm in my 30s. I love anime. I love nerd culture. I love all the other content. I never really dove into wrestling, and Wrestle Quest introduced me to it. He's like, and I asked you guys, where do I start? You said just start at WrestleMania 1 and see what happens. And he's like, that was nice, because it was like eating my dessert first, some of this craziness. And then he's like, I fucking love wrestling now. He started just going in, like marking out. He's showing me his shirts and his room and his toys. And I'm like, this guy's like a year in. And he had like a shrine he'd accumulated in the corner of his like nerd room with all this really great wrestling merch. And I remember thinking like, our job is done here. We introduced wrestling to this dude, Yeah, it was awesome.
That is one of the cool things about being a wrestling fan, is creating your little shrine. As you can see, we all kind of
No doubt.
have our own. Yeah, it's our background, but man, it's cool to just every once in a while you look at it and it little memories, you know. Oh, I remember when I got that, and
Oh yeah.
that's one thing wrestling's been for us, man, is some of our best memories for sure.
Speaking of backgrounds, is that or is that not a whole wall of consoles back there?
Yeah, it's like this is my third floor at my house, and I have like my wife really wanted like a walk-in closet, and I'm like, well, if I cut my gym, I'm like, what if I had a sick game room? You know, so we like kind of knocked down one of the walls back there, and we built a that's kind of like a room that became an entertainment center. You can walk behind, and then the sides pull out. You can like store games. So it's pretty sweet. It's kind of my life's work next to Wrestle Quest, to be honest. You know,
It's pretty awesome. I saw it in a different picture, and I was like, "That is amazing. I want that exactly."
Yeah.
That actually, you remind me of a buddy of mine growing up. He was a big, I mean, like when we were in like grade school and high school, he collected darn near every console ever made. Like he had games for all of them. I mean, Dreamcast, all of it. And he had something very similar to that. And then he, you know, grew up and he was like, well, I got to sell it all. And I'm like, man, you got to keep that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, man. I never sold any of my used games ever. I would sit outside a video game exchange. My parents were grocery shopping, and I would try to buy games off of people before they'd sell them to other, like my whole life. And I'd have like just, you know, everyone else is always 1 or 2 gens ahead, and I'd be just scrapping up those Nintendo and Sega games, and then they move on to the next console, and I'd be like, all right, cool, I'm getting a PlayStation 1 now. And I would just keep on grouping them together, dude. And it's like by the time I got to college, I like moved out in a way, and my mom was like, what do I do with this house of stuff? I'm like, I'll be back, give me a few years, you know. And I think everyone was placing bets like, there's no way he's going to keep this once he has his own place. And then the first thing I did was like make sure I had space in my living room to just
Joke's
stack
on
all my
you.
stuff.
I'm building space for it.
Dude, 'cause, like, how many of us like don't have the toys we had as kids and be like, God, what I wouldn't do, you know? So knowing that, I saved all my son's toys because obviously I bought him a bunch of stuff and tried to get him into stuff that I liked. So he's got cool Ninja Turtles stuff, Transformers stuff, all that stuff, you know. And just once he outgrows it, boom, put it in a bin, put it in the basement, mark it with a year, and like you will appreciate.
Dude, that's awesome. You must have a lot of space down there, huh? In storage.
I got a little bit.
Yeah, well, you guys West Coast or East Coast?
East.
We're in
East
Kentucky.
Coast.
Mid-East, West.
Not West Coast. You probably got space then, you know.
I got a basement. Yeah. So
it's like we have something similar going on here. But my son's like my oldest son's like a Hot Wheels maniac, and like
Save
the amount of Hot Wheels. Yeah, dude, it's like, what is it about them? Like they just see them, they're like, wheels. I'm a boy. I need these, you know. And
to this day, dude, I still like go to the grocery store and I walk by a wall of, an end cap of Hot Wheels. I'm looking.
I get it, man. I just, I had a date night with my wife this weekend, and I was trying to explain to her how we're like genetically drawn to athletic like items. Like you might see a basketball roll by when you're like 4 and you're like, I have to touch it.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, we can't resist. Like I'm trying to explain to her why I had to buy these basketballs, you know.
You want to throw it or kick it or something, you know what I mean? Like
I'm like, you can't get it because your chromosomes are wrong. You don't
understand. There's toys everywhere.
Yeah, dude.
As soon as I was able to, as an adult, I went out and bought a Slinky dog from Toy Story because I always wanted one as a kid, but my parents never got me one. So the second I could, that was literally one of my first paychecks. Like, yeah, I'm getting this.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, I'm so into the. I'm into the wish list like territory in general. I think it's just like so much of our like company ethos and our team. You have to imagine the people that are working for like a retro gaming company are probably throwing a lot of caution to the wind because your resume is not going to exactly fit into the rest of the industry right away after. Like you're kind of like sunsetting some of you're making a decision that's pretty measured. That's like, okay, I love these things and these ideals are so important to me that I'm willing to make these other concessions and share this risk. And it's like, it's definitely created this really interesting atmosphere of people that really want to make the kind of games we make, like the Wrestle Quest likes. And it's, I couldn't have planned it any better. I didn't realize we were building culture. I thought we were just building a ton of lunatics, you know, but it's just like, I love the Slinky Dog type of moments though, man. That's like, it's exactly the energy you brought into like making Wrestle Quest.
It shows. It really does. I gotta. Are you still in Pennsylvania?
Oh yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, PA. Mhm.
So that's so neat because like you normally, I automatically when I started to look you guys up, I'm like, oh, they got to be in Silicon Valley
Right.
somewhere. And I want to take a second to mention the first place I heard about you that I didn't realize till I did some research that I had actually heard about you before, and I've seen a little bit of gameplay of this, and it led me into some research. I want to talk a little bit about Almost Hero.
That's one of the first games we ever made. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the first things where I ever heard about you at all. Well, Mega Cat Studios. I didn't realize it though at the time. So it's a Nintendo Entertainment Center or Nintendo Entertainment System game that released in 2016. How do you go about? Is that is that another passion project? Is that how?
I mean, if you look at our website, it's 90% passion projects. It's it's definitely not a business model, so don't start a business that way. But it's like you know, a group of us, like the original team, were basically like huge like retro gaming fans, and then none of us could really like emulate other games companies because there's only one here in our city, and the one that's here in our city is like educational VR. So it's not like creative entertainment industry stuff. And there's not a huge indie scene here either. So a lot of it was just kind of getting our hands dirty and figuring it out. It's kind of just like, I need to eat more protein. I'm gonna start learning how to grill. It's just like that, just more expensive and slower. So we started making games, and then the first one we made, we donated all the money to a hospital because we weren't set up for tax stuff yet. I figured out a way to just slowly, just quickly get that out and figure out another plan. And then we made another game for a coffee shop, Coffee Crisis, and they ended up deciding basically halfway in they weren't able to like afford it, so we brought that to Kickstarter, finished it, sent that out, and we made Almost Hero, which is another just for fun. Like we just love ninjas and wanted to make a nearly the same as wrestling, but like a lot of us grew up with like Ninja Gaiden, Shinobi, like just all the 80s ninja energy and action. We're like, what if we made like a parody for fun brawler to explore the genre? Because it's an expensive genre to make games in, but if we really keep the scope discipline, it doesn't have to be expensive. We can just kind of test out the waters and figure out, V1, V2, V3, like how we want to explore. And so Almost Here we made also for fun. It was definitely like strangely enough, like a top performing aftermarket Nintendo game. So a lot of ninja homies out there. But we did a ton of bad games you probably see in our portfolio. But it's like you got to look at like it's kind of like building a house. You're like, here's my dream house, and then you cut the scope, and you're like, yeah, I got $100,000 left. I can probably finish this out. And then you start going down the punch list, going through the details, and you have these eureka moments suddenly where you're like, I really need a bigger sink. I don't want people to put their grimy, greasy hands all over my game pads. Like I need a sink in the game room. And next thing you know, it's like all these great ideas happen once you're in the game, immersed by it. And you got to hurry up and just make quick decisions. And software is not good to make quick decisions on. So it's this other, burning fire problem. So, a lot of times we would maintain the retro cartridge kind of pipeline because we knew that all those hard limitations were going to force us faster to not explode. And then we got the modern platforms. We got back to exploding again. But
dude, there's a whole niche like community that loves, cartridge-based games still and the retro games. So I mean, I would say that's me myself. I prefer that. I play Nintendo Switch. I'm the old guy of the group, so I like simpler things. I like simpler times. Me and NES sitting on the floor with a 19-inch or 17-inch TV. That was my childhood. And I still try to repeat that magic. I feel like, and but so many games these days are so complicated to me, and having something like these retro games that they're still, while on the course, because they are retro, kind of seem like younger and simpler. There's a lot going on there, especially with Wrestle Quest, just layers and layers of just like you said with the Easter eggs. I mean, there's just so much going on there, and I love that you can do all that and still maintain that retro style.
Yeah, the nostalgia stuff's tough too because it's like a lot of us are dads, so we don't really have a million hours or finger karate moments to kind of make these super complex like new genres, and then there's good retro and there's bad retro. When I say that, I mean like modern game sensibilities with retro aesthetics and retro like hooks is an interesting mix because quality of life features we have now are probably things we need to have in games, not just accessibility, but we added a ton of quality of life stuff in post launch, even for the game, because even with all the focus groups and the community testing, a lot of us have game sensibilities that are kind of aligned with like the games we play and the style of player we are, and there's so many things are changing all the time still, so it's really interesting to try to create that sense of nostalgia too, without alienating like younger players, because like I think pixel art is timeless, but for a lot of people, I have new employees that don't even know like what a Nintendo is. Like I was listening to someone last week who just hired on like the 3D modeling team, and I overheard her say something in the kitchen that was like, what was that console that like Sonic started on? Was it the Dreamcast? And I'm like,
Oh god.
Oh, no.
I'm like sweating, and I'm like, someone needs to talk to her, like it's
He's fired because I'm old.
yeah, it's wild, man. But it is funny though. It's like it's such a. I mean, I'm 38, and I don't feel old, but I feel really old when I hear that kind of stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like what's happening right now? It's or like people not knowing Macho Man. It was a recurring theme, and on one hand, a lot of those publishers were right. Like Macho Man is timeless and iconic and all those things. However, for a lot of mass market gamers, like they didn't know who Macho Man was. I thought, well, that's part of what we're delivering. Then we're just going to add to Macho Man's legacy because he's super dope, and it's just kind of further entrenched ourselves with what we committed to. Yeah, but it's real though, man. It's like I had so many people that have no idea that a lot of these people are, and even all wrestling fans obviously do, but we have a lot of Easter egg, almost Easter egg people who didn't know we Easter eggs, like Captain Lou. Like, how do you not know Captain Lou? He's on the Mario show, and he's like all the wrestling icon. Yeah, dude, and it's funny. People are like, who's this? This is like a knockoff Mario, and I'm like, man, I can't believe this happening in front of me. Like I'm listening, listening and hearing, and it's like,
how did you not just have nervous breakdowns like every
week? Yeah, I for sure need therapy from Wrestle Quest. Yeah.
So I gotta ask, man, what are there games you still play with? Being the CEO of a gaming company and having kids, do you still have time to play any games?
Yeah, I mean, I play games like it's my job still, and I do schedule them in Fridays. We do Friday game night, and it's like, I love games. First of all, like I'm so lucky to be able to like work in the industry that I grew up hoping to be part of, and being the CEO of like a small, like growing company. We have like 60 people in Pittsburgh. We have a ton of international folks. We have a QA arm and an art arm that are in the Philippines, and like a few hundred people. But it's like art, right? And like a QA, so it's like a service. I can bundle it, and it's repeatable. But all that to say that like the CEO of a small company, that just means I'm in the kitchen unloading the dishwasher, making coffee, we're testing the games. Like we're all doing all this stuff. It's like I do think a good CEO is like vision, culture, people. But the reality is the size of our team and the things we do. You open the door, packages you carry down, you carry the packages down. So it's like everyone's involved a little bit in everything. And an extension of that is like we have to be in touch with the industry and our friends and our colleagues. And we're coming up on a little over 9 years now. A lot of our friends we started with, they actually went out of business. So, and some of them on their third company or on the new, deeper in their journey. So everyone's always releasing something. So I'd say half the games they play are like people we exhibited next to at trade shows or people we kind of came up with, and their magnum opus came out, like their Wrestle Quest or their whatever they're working on. And then whenever I'm working on a game in a genre, we have two really interesting games coming out the next year. One's public and the one's unannounced. One is a Five Nights at Freddy's game. It's coming out later this year. And then and the other one's like a unannounced like stealth title that I can't wait for everyone to see, because it'll definitely change our company forever. But it's like both of them multi-year projects. And when you're working on a game in the genre, you have to consume all the stuff in the genre too, to make sure you're reading between the lines to get everything the players want, and like really touching all those fandom moments. So like one of the games we're working on has us doing a lot of like fighters, Metroidvanias, brawlers. So we're consuming this like backlog of like 30 years of games we may have not played for a while or touching new ones. So I'm mentioning this because you like have to do that. Like even if you don't want to play the games, you have to consume them like it's homework sometimes because you have to understand like why the sentiment is the way it is, what people loved about it, what they hated, you know.
We do the same thing when we do because we do interviews a lot. Like primarily our show now is interviews, but we still twice a month do wrestle talk. So we have to watch wrestling even when it sucks. So I get that 100%. You gotta absorb every single bit of your industry, if you will.
Yeah, of course.
I gotta tell you though, when I get off of here, I'm going back and showing this clip to my daughter because she is going to freak out that I'm talking to somebody working on a FNAF game. Because FNAF is everything in her world, bro. She makes FNAF masks and all this other stuff. She loves it. So the fact that I'm talking to somebody working on something, she's gonna be so excited.
Yeah, how old your daughter?
She just turned 10.
Oh, dude, that's like FNAF super fan age. They do a great job at like attracting, despite being this kind of horror jump scare genre, attracting like 8 to 16-year-old super fans that stick with them forever. I have team members in their 30s that kind of like discovered FNAF when it was brand new 10 years ago that are just like so happy to be working on it. And then when I look into some of the things that are current FNAF, like not just the movie, like they're like junior adult scholastic novels or like top performing scholastic novels, like book fair level, like school stuff. I'm like, what is with like the Freddy's franchise that it just extends all these tentacles, you know?
Well, and it's crazy too. I actually went and because I know my daughter had talked about it and stuff like that. I had no idea what Five Nights at Freddy's was. And I went and like looked at like the story of it, and I'm like, why are kids talking about that? Like, this is so dark. But hey, man, you like what you like.
They made a pretty decent movie too, man. I like, you know, I mean, it's no Citizen Kane, you know what I mean? But it's got Matthew Lillard in it, and it's pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to win tons of awards, but you'll enjoy your time.
It creeped me out.
It did perform well too. I thought the movie was good too. You know,
I did. I had to take my daughter to go meet Matthew Lillard not too long after that, and she was just so very excited. Everyone else is talking about Scream, and there to meet him because of Scream, and we're like, you know, she's all about Five Nights at Freddy's. So
I get it.
Yeah, man.
So I'm curious, like you talked about getting like lots of, you know, feedback and stuff like that when you release a game. I've seen it myself. We played Destiny for years, and watching like, you know, forums and stuff like that, and people complain about things or making suggestions, and then seeing them implement the game at some point. Like, how big does the noise got to be to where you guys listen and maybe implement something that the fans or players want?
You know, it's funny. It's like sometimes we'll hear something one time, and it is already like validating something that's on our mind, and sometimes it's just not possible no matter how many millions of times you hear it. It just depends on like so there's a business underneath, right? So there's like here's the cost to support it, here's the cost for this change, here's the cost for rework, the cost for testing. Like software is a slippery slope to get creative with sometimes because, you know, just putting out a patch, like I think we spent almost $400,000 in just this year in Wrestle Quest patches, like very expensive. And you're like, how?
Holy shit.
Like, what's going on? What do you mean? You know, and it's just like, there's so many platforms, and just every time you make changes and you test them and it's a big game, it's multiple people for full-time work weeks to validate the test to make sure we're putting out something that is increasing the threshold and quality standard and reducing the bugs. And all the bugs are unique to all the different random things people can do, plus the different platforms and the different machines they're playing them on. So there's just so many. The bigger a game is, the harder it is to take feedback late in development. But, you know, we get feedback all day, every day on every channel. I think every game company in the world probably gets love letter emails that are like, I have the best idea for a game ever. You want to hear it? You know, we get a lot of those, right? But we also get a lot of fans, and a lot of times the most like surly and upset people to find a bug end up being like your biggest super fans ever because they're just so committed and engaged. Like I'd have, you know, some of the people would write us just crazy hate mail because of like a crash or something, and you're like, hey, it's the first time we've heard about this. Thanks for sending. Could you send a crash log? Like, you know, we respond to every message. It's not like we have a customer support team now. It's like Steam forums, social channels, email tickets, Discord. Like it's we take it all really seriously, but it's tough because sometimes we just can't take the feedback. It's just not possible, right? It's like we have games we shipped years ago that people start asking for new stuff on, or new updates, or new features, but it's like you can't spend that money to do some of those things for that one person, or those 10 people, or those 5 people. Right. So it depends on when it comes in.
It's a balancing game. And that's your job, ain't it? I mean, you're the CEO. You got to keep this ship afloat.
Yeah, and to that same point, it's hard to know sometimes if someone's describing the root cause or the symptom, right? So it's like a massive, a really common theme where people pick out, here's I think it is, it's this, and this, but really it's like this way northeast thing.
I do it all the time.
Dude, yeah, and it's like that's how it is too. And it's like we really can't. I mean, we can't respond to customer messages or like, let me teach you game design. Like we're not, like.
I have to ask this because, like Mike said, we both play Destiny a lot. I still play it, and the amount of people that I hear complain about, like, oh, the devs this, the devs that, they need a new game engine and stuff. Like, how much do you see stuff like that and you're just like, these people have no clue what actually goes into this?
Yeah, man, it's like I feel like I'm still learning all the time, and I feel like I've lived 3 careers in the last 9 years doing it. So it's like
right.
It's hard with setting fan expectations because on one hand you want to give them all the context so they can like level with you. And maybe you can actually have a useful longer term impact by giving them the extra time that other people might not, and saying, hey, by the way, like here's how I'm looking at it, and here's how I'm taking what you're saying, and here's my options, and here's how my work. And most people don't want to get a book back, but when we see little opportunities, we do have these conversations with fans. We do them on all sorts of groups. We've had a lot of these, like we used to do dinner with the devs things in our Discord, which we don't anymore, but lots of them did turn into the kind of calls, and some people love peeking behind the curtain like that, and it does like resonate with them. But behind every game, they're just like people, and their whole career is built around like these like little risks they take, sometimes bigger risks, and like there's a business underneath it too, which makes it way harder to manage because like removing the business part and just making games would be so much fun.
Yeah.
Like I'll die prematurely because of like the games industry. Like it's just like a constant.
It definitely seems cut. I mean, especially like I've noticed, which I'm hoping that it hasn't happened to you guys, but like a lot of these big studios with layoffs and everything like that in the game industry recently, it just feels like, you have all these projections that you're going to do, and then those projections didn't get met. Half the workforce is gone, or, whatever like that, which it just feels like they're going for broke and there's not much else they can do about it.
Well, there's like everyone's referring to it like the games winter right now, where they're like that, budgets are tightened up. All the first parties, like your major platforms, Sony and Microsoft, etc., they've cut some of their budgets, and then that trickles down to the third parties and your publishers and eventually the studios. And if everyone's cutting back on the first party side, that all trickles down rapidly. Like I have colleagues left and right shredding staff or closing the doors, and it's not happening to us right now. We don't take anything for granted, and we're on high alert because we're still in like a growth phase, but it's measured. And then in general, like it's like we have a healthy fear for what our industry is, which is hit based, and you make 2 bad games, you're out. And the reason a lot of these games, these like last 3 years is like when you're really, I guess there's like two things in direct conflict. There's what are your dream games, and are they a good business decision? And that's never it's never easy, It's like you join the games industry to make these games you want to make, but is there an audience? Is it big enough?
Right.
How many features do you need? What's the highest impact way to do it? Who are the right people? Can they share the vision? Like and all those things you try to intersect all of them. So there's all these crosshairs lined up and you're just shooting straight, but it's never how it is because games are also slow. Like a big game, years, 1, 2, 3, 4+ years. And when you kick these projects off, especially with a group of full-time people, like you can't look into the crystal ball 2 years from now. You don't know if someone else is making the same game.
Right.
You know, we had so many people that came to us as we were talking about Wrestle Quest and tell us, I've been wanting to make this wrestling game for years. Like, what's it like? Or like, hey, here's why we shut ours down. Or we're going to make a wrestling RPG. Check it out. We actually had 2 copycat folks kind of surface. And I was like, oh, this is awesome that we're like inspiring other people to do their service. But like, what did they get to market before us after all this work?
Right.
You know, they actually vanished, but it's just because it's hard, you know, but it's like a lot of games get announced in every genre, at every size of studio. And you see how the cutbacks right now, Square Enix just cut like a ton of slate. Like everyone cuts, you know, like it's just like the creative work you guys do. Sometimes you got to just kill your darlings. It's really hard to do. We had a game that got terminated on our slate about a month and a half ago or so. Like one of our key partners basically just called me, ran to my cell phone and said, hey, we're terminating this game. And we've been working on this thing for like 2.5 years. And they're just dealing with financial challenges. So their budget shifted, and that's just part of the slate. So it's we're impacted just like everybody else is, but thank God we have all sorts of other cool stuff going on, you know?
Yeah, that's good. And I don't know how much you guys deal with this with the games that you make, but I see it a lot in, I don't know, I guess the big AAA titles, especially like live service games and stuff like that. In this day and age, it feels like there's a group of players out there that's just like doesn't want to play the game. They want to see how they can break the game. Like no matter how many patches you come out with, it's like, let me see how I can manipulate and glitch. And I don't understand how people want to play like that. You know, teach their own or whatever. But is that something that you guys have to deal with?
Yeah, I guess it's like that's a crazy sound. What's that?
That's the
those are
tornado
tornado
siren
sirens.
going off in my neighborhood right now. My wife's wondering why I'm not going downstairs. I'm like, listen, we're live, and
Literally go viral if we get hit with the tornado.
until I see one, I'm not going downstairs, love. I'm sorry.
We get to the player point, like we get all types of players, like everyone does, but there's definitely a whole world of like speedrunner or glitch people that's like the only way they play games, and I can't relate to it, but I appreciate it. And it's like, we're not making the game for them anyway, but if they want to go hard, dude.
Yeah, and, you know, like the speed run thing, like that's one thing, but I feel like there's a group that's just like, let me see how I can, you know, cheese this or, you know, whatever. Yeah. And it's like, why don't you just play it and enjoy it? Or just let me see how fast I can farm this. And I'm like,
dude, yeah, man,
how are
all
you
day.
enjoying that?
I feel bad you had this tornado siren going off too, and I have like a dog that's rumbling. Do you think I could take a 30-second, let him out the door, break in the next minute or two? I'll be super fast, guys.
You're
absolutely
go for it.
He's gonna poop his dog pants. I can just tell. He's like,
you're good.
I'll be right back.
You're good. Oh man, yeah. My wife. I'm sure my wife is probably like, "Why the hell is he still live on his show right now?"
Dedication.
Man, I got to tell you, for those of you listening right now, James has been a great guest. I don't know. I've been enjoying him. He's been very, what's the word I'm looking for? Astute and knowledgeable. You know what I mean? And he's definitely not a one-word answer guy, which is great for a podcast. So.
The best kind of guest.
Well, I'm learning so much, you know, from him, because obviously we're all big gamers, but like hearing kind of the behind, he's not necessarily like, you know, breaking the wall down like, hey, here's how it's made, but just hearing different things that he has to go through on that side is really interesting.
This is why we do this, boys.
Yeah, it's awesome. Man, those sirens are really going off.
Again, though, I just love, man, I love the retro style. And I mean, even though it's like 16-bit, you know, per se graphics, it looks crisp.
It really does.
And to know that all that shit's hand drawn, all those different frames and stuff like
that's
that,
cool.
and the work that's gone into it.
There's another game out there that's along that vein that's called Octopath Traveler, and they call it HD 16-bit. So it's like old school graphics, but it's HD style, you know.
There he is.
Hey, there he is.
I feel particularly bad hearing that siren, but I can hear my dog just like he's having a rough night, dude. We give him a ton of chicken.
I saw you had a three-legged cat back there, man.
Oh yeah, Ultra Cat. Yeah,
So
she's-
my wife is the president of an animal rescue, and we're a pretty large one here in Butler County in Ohio. And it's
Hey, kitty.
every single strangely born or deformed or weird cat comes to my house. And I saw a
I can
three-legged
confirm
cat.
that.
I was like, oh, kindred spirits. They have a different one.
Even cats whose urine stink to high heaven.
Oh my god, that was rough. That one was
yeah, dude. It's funny, man. Like she was a surprise adoption. We have two other cats. I have Mega and Micro. Micro's like a giant cat too. It was a bad fit for the name, but
Perfect.
you know, we lived in an area. Our first house, my wife and I lived in like this college area. Like at the end of every semester, people would abandon all these cats. And she's like a cat lady. She'd be outside like Elmer Fudd tracking them and inside. You know, so you'd have this like collection of like
Yeah,
Craigslist
kitty.
yeah, and it was a problem, man. It's like I'd come home and I'd be like 3 more cats. I'm like, Jesus, Amanda, you know what's going on at this house?
You
Like,
guys
I
are
can't live
two
like
peas
this.
in a pod,
I was
dude.
about to say,
Yeah.
bro, we're both named James. We both have cat lady wine.
So you know, so fast forward, it's like we became friends with a lot of the local cat shelters.
Yep.
And you know, whenever the winter's around, we don't do the zoos, which my son's like crazy into like zoo, and so we do like we go to the pet shelters and we like walk the dogs or pet the cats. And I was on Black Friday. We were at the one local pet shelter here, and they like know us. We're there every week, right? So like she comes over and she's like, hey James, you're gonna love these. She's like, we have a litter of these like tragic tripod cats that were abused by this like lunatic, and they're all getting off suture today, and you guys can play with them. So like she brought these like 4 tripods in, and my son's like playing with the cats, and I like left the room, was talking to the volunteer at the front desk, came back, and then my son Max and Ultra were both like sitting upright in the chair as if they were like in a meeting. I'm like, what is happening in this room? You know, and it's like and Max is like, I think we should take her home. And I like, you know, FaceTime my wife. I'm like, I shouldn't ask this question, but do you want another cat? And she's like, absolutely not. So obviously we adopted her, you know.
Yeah, obviously.
She's great, man. She's 6 months old, but I think she's like the most fun I've had with a kitten in a long time. So we're usually getting these older, senior, like ancient cats missing all their teeth, always medical problems, and it's like
right.
having a nice fresh one, missing a leg. I'm ready for that one, dude. She's like cascading up the stairs at the office, like interrupting people at work. It's really good, you know.
Gotta love it,
Just
man.
perusing your background for a few during the show.
Yeah,
she made her problem around these parts. Courts, you know.
we have a cat that 3 of its 4 legs were born like this. So it's got, and she meanly named him Rex. So he's got these little arms, and he's a orange tabby, but he's the cutest little thing in the world, man. And it's crazy because so many people would never say, you know, I'm not taking that kind of cat. It takes all this extra work. Not really, man. It really doesn't.
You know, my favorite random rescue, we had this cat named Magnum. There was this huge, like, some kind of mix that included like massive cats, you know, like this. He was like 30-pound cat. And my wife went to go pick him up, and he had all this prescription food, all these stomach issues. And all of it went away in like a year. So we ended up having this incredibly healthy giant cat. Like all of his weird mange all healed, his fur grew back, and he was just this like, he was like the cat godfather at my house. Like he'd always be, you know, fathering the random kittens, picking them up to the thing. And he'd like put the dogs in check. I had a ton of big bulldogs, and he'd check those bulldogs faster than the dogs would. You know, he would just claw on their jowl and just look at them in the eyes, and they would just like sit down. You know, so funny, man. I was teaching Hogan, one of my bulldogs, to sit, and I remember Magnum was getting so bothered waiting for the treat. He grabbed his paw and he pushed the damn, you know, dog's ass down with it. And I was like, I have it on video. It's the most ridiculous thing, you know. But
You can't tell you're an 80s wrestling fan. Hogan,
right.
Magnum.
And Magnum came with that name. He was like branded for me, but
So, are you while we're looking at Briscoe there, are you familiar with baseball? You watch a little baseball at all?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
every once in a while we have a guest on. We have a thought of who they look like, and we'll share it in our private chat.
Okay.
And we all agree. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but Joey Votto, man, you're
Oh yeah.
an image for Joey Votto.
The great Canadian.
Yeah, Red Art ruined my approach to Canadians, but I appreciate it. You know, Well, we joke all the time about like our love for Canada is reduced 50% now, but a lot of great athletes up there. Good wrestlers too, man.
Yeah.
Great
So
wrestler.
one question I've been wanting to ask this whole time, but I keep asking other questions. And we usually ask this to everybody. Was there a moment for you that you were like, man, I love wrestling, that you just, it's just like the core memory that you were like, God,
The
I
one
love
that
this.
drew you in, the first one.
Yeah, I guess like I want to say I can nail it down to two. So one of them was like when I grew up in like the foster care program, and I remember one of the homes we were at, like the parents there on Easter, each gave us a wrestling action figure, and we spanned from like ages 2 to 18. So it was like Easter, and I remember like the parents in that house were so awesome, and they were just like the dad was really excited to wake us up and have us watch at like 9 p.m. like Nitro or equivalent. And all I remember was like holding this Ric Flair and trying to act out as much as possible despite his limbs not moving, and being like, all right, I can get into this. This is cool. This is like a superhero, but it's a dude. He's on TV, so I'm in. And then so that one's like very strong memories because that just broke me into like watching it all the time. But I remember like very vividly around like middle school, which is like attitude era for me. Like you talk about your first job and your slinky toy. Like my first job, actually my very first thing I bought was this ridiculous, like a dragon fighting a lion silk shirt. I don't know why I bought that, but
Because you were cool.
It was the 90s.
But right after that, I bought like a ton of knockoff WCW shirts at this local spot. That was like I got a Wolfpack shirt and a Goldberg shirt, which I wish I didn't buy at the time. But I bought a ton of cool wrestling shirts, like 10. And I remember being in that shop. I felt like I was part of like a community for the first time because when I was walking around to buy one shirt, all these wrestling fans of all ages were just, going hard, chatting about, Sting and fan theories. And I was like, oh my God, I thought this was this private thing in my house, but there's this greater world. And that guy that owned the shop introduced me to the eFed. And I joined the eFed that day. And I remember going home and just being like, on AOL, hyped in these chats and these eFeds, waiting for my like Sunday randomly generated Mad Lib style wrestling roundup, and just like wrestling is more than this. Like there's more people that love it, and I carried that with me for the next couple of years, and it was so like awesome to feel like you're part of something greater. Because I was kind of like a nerdy, fast talking, always changing homes foster kids that kind of rooted me a little bit into like, look, I'm part of this thing. There's this like global wrestling community, and we all have this shared interest, and that's kind of cool because I've always thought I was like the weird kid, right? My oldest brothers were awesome athletes too, and I was like, why do I suck at sports? And I also don't want to be great at sports. Like I just want to watch wrestling,
Right.
That's the shirt thing probably, but it's like I never forget that first action figure though either.
Yeah,
It's crazy, man. We really are kindred spirits, man. My mother went to prison when I was like 15 years old, and I got dumped into foster care myself. So I went through that as well. But I was so very blessed that my foster dad was a cool guy. He was just a really cool dude, and he took care of me. And it was just I was scared to death going into it, but when I look back at it, it was a good portion of my life. So but we're definitely kindred spirits, man. It's weird. James, the damaged cats, like
that's funny, man. Yeah,
I just love hearing another positive story that origins in professional wrestling, like even through the struggles of the foster program, finding that light, with wrestling and finding, that being your core there. I think that's so cool. And again, something that's rooted in violence, emanates such positivity.
Man, it's like I was just talking to my wife about some of this like boy stuff this weekend because she wants to have another kid, and we're talking about Max is 4 and he's a little bit rough on his 1-year-old brother. And I was trying to just level set that I'm not a pro dad, amateur dad, but I'm pretty sure once Axel, my youngest, is 2 or 3, he'll be able to push back. He'll figure it out. Like the best we're doing is trying to level with him and talk to hey Max, like don't push your brother, like share your toy, all that stuff you do when you're raising 2 kids. And it's like I was trying to explain to her like boys are just more physical, and they're just like high energy, rough and tumble, like machine bowling balls. Like they just they walk into stuff, they pick stuff up. All I remember as a kid was like fighting, digging, riding my bike, like just dealing with bugs and worms and snakes.
Dude,
and like
digging. Like just digging for absolutely nothing.
How far I
fire?
can dig.
Yeah, and then
How
like
far I can dig.
and then it was like, oh, now I learned fire. Let's make fires in our holes. You know.
Yeah.
I've explained to her. You can see her eyes glazing over, and she's like, "That's not what it's like to grow up as a girl." I'm like, "Of course it's not." Like
That's a very real thing, man. I had 2 girls before I ever had my boy, and when we had my
Same.
boy, he automatically, you mentioned it earlier, he automatically picked up a Hot Wheel. Like it was like my daughters never cared, but my son instantly wanted things with wheels. I don't know if it's a boy thing or what, but
Yeah.
I gotta say
Yeah.
though, we're over an hour in. Before we wrap this up, I gotta know, man, because I've tried to Google it and I've seen certain quotes here and there. Is there any hope for a Wrestle Quest 2?
Man, I hope so. We had a really big plan for DLC, but our publisher is kind of shifting strategies away from indie.
Yeah.
And the way it all worked out is they own like the name, the title, the stuff. So we'd have to find some other creative way, get another party to lead that. So we're working on it though, and it's not like dead. It's just it's not going to happen this year or next, unfortunately. But every sale of Wrestle Quest increases the likelihood of it. And what's interesting, and this is worth noting too, wrestling fans are like very consistent and evergreen. Like most games, they sell 90 days, they peak down, they rock. Wrestle Quest, every month, new people find it, reach out, play it, like it, share it, and there's this like natural, like the people that like it get it. It's niche, but it's like they share it with their homies, and they're like, "Hey man, check this out! I really enjoyed this." And it's basically the lifeblood of Wrestle Quest because they put nothing into marketing it, and it just continues to find wrestling fans. So I think as long as that keeps happening too, they increase our likelihood. But we have a DLC that we worked on that's like 30-40% done. That could be built into either 2 or a big chunk, but with the games industry in this weird shell shock moment, everybody's kind of like measuring everything and waiting, but I don't think I'll be able to like die happy without making one more Wrestle Quest somewhere. So I'm sure it'll happen some way.
Well, if you do, we would like to officially here in front of everybody donate our name, image, and likeness to that said game.
Yeah, we're going to have to do it. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, definitely, man. If there's any work we can do, we're no game developers, man, but if there's any work we can put in to help or maybe, we can sponsor some certain things. Granted, I don't think our money is going to really affect a company of your size, but we're just willing to put in some work. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, dude, man, it's like people always ask me, how do they help game companies? Playtesting, feedback, like private focus groups are like massive lifeblood. Like being able to talk to super fans that actually like and play certain things is more valuable than anything. Like that's that time and that insight's like crazy valuable.
I will play test your games all day long.
All right, Big Greg, you better remember those words when I reach back out.
Hey, all I'm saying is if you never need any testers for FNAF, my daughter will think I'm so cool. Just saying.
No, talking.
We'll test the hell out of it.
Easy. Well, thank you guys again. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Oh man,
Dude,
you were
thank
a
you.
great guest. We'll be posting
Fantastic.
some clips over the next few weeks, and we got to have you back on at some point, man. We'll reach back out in the future. Maybe we'll have you on next year or maybe later this year, whatever the schedule ends up working out for.
Cool. Sounds good. Catch y'all later,
man. Yeah. Well, you boys got anything else before we get out of here?
Nah, I'm gonna go get safe because the sirens.
Yeah, see, you better get in the basement, sir.
Let's wrap this up quick then. As always, we have been the DWO Podcast. I am Big Rig Eric Maffey. He is Mr. Magnificent Mike Martin. He is Wrestling T-shirt Guy Cephas. And he is the one and only James Deighan of Mega Cat Studios. Sir, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. As always, you can check us out on all the socials at DW_podcast, Facebook at the DWO Podcast, TikTok at DW_pod. Get that dad merch at Pro Wrestling Tees and T Public. Yeah, we really need to wrap this up, Mr. Siren Boy.
I still got to do my shirt video, man.
Well, do it quick.
Can't let my world record die for a tornado.
I know. What the heck? Hey, well, until next time, top dads out.